I've been doing a lot of coaching so far this season, and it's actually inspired me to make this video. This is the top 3 biggest mistakes I see Brewmaster players making. So I'm going to be covering 3 different things today in this video. You can use timestamps below to quickly jump around to the different sections. It's going to be a little bit more laissez-faire, I guess, a little bit more laid back. I don't really have a script prepared, but I want to talk about 3 different elements of the Brewmaster monk. I've really been seeing like 3 main mistakes. The first one that I want to talk about, though, is misuse of Nizao or Niwao, however you want to say it. Basically, one of our major cooldowns, invoke the Black Ox. I see a lot of players using not only this cooldown, but they're pairing it with Weapons of Order, which kind of makes sense. But when you're playing Call to Arms, you're also going to summon a version of the Black Ox for 12 seconds whenever you hit Weapons of Order. And so basically the general rule of thumb is that you want to separate these 2 different cooldowns. You don't have to use them completely separately, but basically the reasoning why is because you won't benefit from having both Oxes active. The way that the cow works is that whenever you purify, your Black Ox is going to stomp, dealing damage, which is good. The problem is only one of your active Oxes can do that. So if you have 2 active, only one is going to gain the benefit of the actual stomp. While you will gain the extra melee attacks from having the additional pet active, you're basically losing out on valuable stomp damage. So when you go in here, and let's say I pop Weapons of Order, and then I also summon the Black Ox, so I have 2 of them active, as you can see here. When I purify, you're only going to see 1 hit of the stomp cast. So the only thing I'm really benefiting from is specifically the melee attacks from these Oxes, which, by the way, do a fair bit of damage, considerably. So that is kind of the major flaw that I've been seeing players make. And I don't know if there's maybe misinformation out there, or when you think about any cooldown class, you sometimes want to pair your offensives together to be even more powerful, which makes sense. But in this case, you're actually hurting yourself by using the 2 Black Oxes together. So what you should be doing is you should be using your Weapons of Order cooldown, and for the first 12 seconds or so, give or take, you want to not hit the Black Ox. Then, if you'd like to, and ideally, you'll then, once your Call to Arms Ox expires, that's when you'll send your actual Invoke Nizao the Black Ox cooldown, which will not only obviously last for an additional 25 seconds, extending basically your uptime from having it only for 25 seconds with 2 of them active to 37 seconds, math, right? Where you're going to be benefiting not only from like the stomp damage the entire time, but it also mobs are going to be taking more damage from your Weapons of Order window, which can be extended past that 30-second mark because the debuff lasts for 10 seconds. So if you hit it and refresh right at the end of the cooldown with a Keg Smash or Rising Sun Kick, you're then going to be dealing that damage by increased damage by 32% for the entire Black Ox cooldown. So what that'll look like is something, I guess, like, can I use a different dummy since that one is now being taken over? So what you'll do is you'll roll in, you'll Weapons of Order, and then you'll do your damage per usual. So you'll purify here, you'll purify there. My Ox has 4 more seconds left. 3, 2, 1, and then you'll summon your Ox again, which will now last 25 seconds, and you still have a good bit of the cooldown left. Now I'm just obviously hitting buttons here, so the damage isn't going to be like super optimal, but then you can like do a Purifying Brew reset to get some of your charges back with Black Ox Brew. And then by the time your cow expires, so 7 seconds, 6 seconds, I also have roughly 6 seconds, 2, 3, 2, 1, so they're ending roughly at the same time. And this way, your stomp damage is going to actually have multiple actual stomp casts, and obviously this will scale with your damage being taken because of like mastery increases from high tolerance, etc., and training. But basically, this is how you properly use the cooldown. To further even showcase that, I want to pull up something like Lorgs, because this is true in both Keys and Mythic Plus. This is generally how you want to use it. Now, there is some outliers. There are some people who are using the Black Ox a little bit earlier. There's benefits to having that active during Lust. But basically, most of the logs, and we're specifically looking at Plexus Sentinel, you're going to see players popping Weapons of Order on pull, and then most of them, roughly about 16 seconds in, between 13 and like 20 seconds in, are actually popping their actual Nizao cooldown. And so staggering them is the best way to optimize, I would say, or get the maximum amount of value out of both of the CDs. Again, you do benefit from having 2 active with melee attacks. You don't benefit from the stomp damage. So that is a very important distinction. All right, so we're moving on to tip number 2, or I guess mistake number 2 that people make that you can try to be more aware of, is that in raids specifically, and this will leak into Mythic Plus if you are someone who is deciding not to play Shado-pan in Mythic Plus, which is fine. I think Master of Harmony, there's a lot of things that Master of Harmony is very good for. I really like it in things like Dawnbreaker. I really like it in things like Floodgate, as well as Streets. The reason why is it brings a little bit of additional group healing through your potential energy. Granted, not a lot. But it also brings way better single target in a vacuum. And sometimes when you're up against a timer, more often than not, having more boss damage will generally help. And so, again, Master of Harmony can be played. But basically, I don't want to rant. I want to get to the point, which is you should be using Celestial Infusion often and aggressively. A big mistake that I see players make is that they kind of like do their opener and then they're waiting for more harmony to be accumulated before hitting Celestial Infusion. The problem with that is that, yes, storing more damage leads to a bigger burst window when you eventually hit it, but it means you're wasting cooldown, like cooldown reduction potential. You're also then missing out on your potential energy stacks from when you Tiger Palm, which, as you can see, is a lot of damage. And the most important thing is that you gain 20% more damage being dealt while you have this debuff on the target. And that's like a very important distinction, that you want to try to have high uptime on your Coalescence debuff, basically. So you're doing more damage constantly, which then has a good feedback loop, because when you are dealing 20% more damage, you are then going to be accumulating 20% more vitality through your attacks, which is obviously extremely important. So there's this really important feedback loop that requires you to try to optimize and have vitality applied to your mobs as often as possible. So you want to be casting it as often as possible. And obviously the additional kind of benefactor to that is the fact that you get potential energy buffs, which you want to be gaining because, again, it does the majority of your damage. If you come to... So this is a log that I did actually last night on Soulbinder, and you can see that the majority of my damage for the fight is actually going to be coming from both Aspect of Harmony and Harmonic Surge, and this is because I am constantly hitting Celestial Infusion. If we come here and we look at my casts, you're going to see that I'm casting it very frequently, basically whenever it is available, and using Black Ox Brew to reset the cooldown. And so if we save this and then we look at damage being done, you can see that when you do use Celestial Infusion, you're going to see these like big peaks of damage whenever I am consistently using this spell. You're going to see these peaks. So the burst damage, yes, it comes from the vitality being dumped onto the target, but it also comes from your tier set. And this is a mistake that I see a lot of Brewmasters play, is they reserve it. They try to sit on it for a big damage event, which makes sense because Brewmaster has played like that for a very long time, because Celestial Brew is our main way to mitigate damage, and especially in raid content. So you wanted to save it for a time where you were going to take damage. But now with this being more of a DR and having high uptime is like really important, you want to be sending it consistently. So that is my note on that. I ended up dying. I forgot I was in combat with this guy. Fun. The last thing I want to talk about is munching blackout combos. Now this is a very difficult thing to master. I've been playing Brewmaster for years, and I still sometimes struggle, because instinctively as a tank, you're taught to react to damage being taken. Purifying Brew is somewhat of our main active mitigation. It is off the global cooldown, and it instantly clears the stagger we've just recently taken, the damage we've taken, and it heals us for the damage that we've also cleared. So instinctively, we want to hit it whenever we take damage, whenever there's a damage event that happens, and this often becomes reactionary, and being off the global cooldown, it can cause issues in Blackout Combo munching. So what do I mean by that? So Blackout Combo is an ability in our spec tree that causes our Blackout Kick to empower our next ability, and then the Brewmaster player gets to choose how they want to kind of consume that buff. Now, in the current iteration of the game, we are no longer playing Breath of Fire, so that isn't even a contender. So basically, it's Tiger Palm to gain more single target damage and increase the damage by 100%. You have Keg Smash, which gives you CDR, which isn't terrible in keys, but you definitely want to avoid it in like raid settings often. Your Celestial Brew will gain a Purified Chi stack, so this will benefit you earlier in a pull where maybe you didn't have time to purify enough to build up a nice big Celestial Brew with enough Purified Chi stacks. So it's like good early on in a pull, but generally you also want to avoid hitting Celestial Brew. And finally, Purifying Brew, which pauses your stagger damage being taken for 3 seconds. More often than not, I would say in 99.9% of scenarios, there's no reason for you to ever want to actually pause your stagger. Now, there are very niche situations that I'm not going to get into here, but basically know that the only thing you really want to do for pure damage is Tiger Palm. But like I said, Purifying Brew is very easy to hit off the global. So what I'm trying to say is that you want to be hyper aware of whenever you do hit Blackout Kick, you don't want to hit Purifying Brew. Ever. Well, obviously, once the combo is gone, then you want to hit Purifying Brew to obviously clear stagger and build Purified Cheese Stacks, etc. It's also good for stomp damage. And so when you're in this cooldown, or not even cooldown, when you get this buff, which is worth tracking, by the way, you always want to follow with a Tiger Palm. And like I said, what I see often is that players end up with a Blackout Kick, and because it's on the global and they're in a fast-paced pull, they go Blackout Kick, Purify, Tiger Palm, and they don't realize that they hit Purifying Brew, and they lose out on that damage potential, which is what we call munching. You are eating the proc early, you're wasting the proc, is basically what it comes down to. So the best thing you can do is you want to try to train yourself to be actively aware of whenever you do hit Blackout Kick or whatever your keybind ends up being. For me, it's my one button. When I Blackout Kick, I don't want to press anything else until a Tiger Palm is dispatched, because it's going to do a lot of damage. It's also going to do Harmonic Surge damage, but that's kind of a different point. And that's it. So just to quickly recap, don't use your Oxes at the same time. You want to stagger them out a little bit. Tracking your Call to Arms cow is really important. Once it expires, that's when you then send your Invoke Nizao, and that should alleviate that pain. You're going to gain more damage from this. At the end of the day, is it like crazy to do? Is it like bad to do them together? No. But should you? Probably not. So try spacing those out. If you're playing Master of Harmony, especially in Raid, make sure you're using Celestial Fusion aggressively. It's not Celestial Brew anymore. You have to kind of train yourself to realize it's a 30% DR that has like a pretty high uptime. And by hitting it, it then reverses the damage. You're now doing big damage while absorbing damage. And last but not least, become hyper aware of your Blackout Kick keybind. And whenever you do hit it, make sure you're hitting Tiger Palm, or I guess in some cases, Keg Smash. So I hope this video helps. I've been doing a lot of coaching. If you're interested in coaching and you're interested in me either reviewing logs, video reviews, one-on-one sessions, reach out to me on Discord. I've been getting a lot of inquiries lately, and we can talk more there. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.